search for spices launched an age of exploration and discovery. It is still happening today. One spice is the symbol for all spices, the most used, the most important, the king of spices, pepper. Hunters of medieval Europe craved the spice. This is not medieval Europe, it is Quebec, where medieval tradition often lingers. Hunting the boar was for centuries an activity restricted to the aristocracy. These modern Quebecers are anxious to share the ancient pleasure of princes. Whether meat was killed in the hunt or slaughtered for lack of fodder, pepper was vital for both preservation and flavor. Only a prince could afford to rub pepper into a carcass like this. The spice was precious. Not only was it essential to cure meat, it was used in all the ways money is employed today. A single pound of pepper could buy a serf his freedom, and there were very few free serfs. Medieval food, some claim, contained the spice to cover rancid tastes. Certainly this was true, but not always. Abundant pepper was cooked with fresh meat as well. People simply enjoyed the taste. Ah, so here is a snack fit for a medieval prince. Spit roasted pork with pepper, dipped in a typical hot, peppery sauce. Today, the people of Quebec, like people everywhere, neither have to hunt nor preserve meat with pepper. They just like it, a taste to enjoy. Except, that is, if you're a bull. The Romans, too, liked to chase their pork, which they also seasoned with pepper. In fact, the Romans liked everything with pepper, even honey. But much ordinary Roman food was remarkably similar to today's. Everything in this shop in Bologna, like these spice meats, were also made and loved by the Romans. Cheeses, too, often were blended with pepper, which was stored in giant warehouses called Horea Peperataria. The Romans sailed all the way to the home of the spice, India, and brought it to be used in delicacies like this bel paese, made from ewe's milk and pepper. In 408, the barbarian King Alaric besieged Rome and demanded a ransom of pepper. The barbarians also held an understandable passion for these delights. The Romans paid. The barbarians sacked the city anyhow and took the rest of the pepper. Rome fell. But pepper created a new empire. Of course, we are in Venice. From here, Marco Polo set out and saw the fabled pepper lands of the East. But the Venetians were already well acquainted with the spice. Indeed, the very splendor of their city depended on its trade. Pepper journeyed westward with the Arabs. Venetians traded for it in Alexandria and brought it to Venice. Cooking was second nature to the people of Venice, who were, after all, Italians. They started this medieval sauce by mixing breadcrumbs with rich beef marrow and melted butter. La piara, as it was called, enriched the rather dull taste of boiled meats. Like the Romans before them, Europeans also had regard for pepper as a medicine. It made one sweat and was beneficial for ailments of the stomach. In Venice, gold was exchanged for Indian pepper, and the clever Venetians managed to keep more than a bit of each. Long ago, when this recipe was popular, to do this was considered the height of luxury. No wonder the world envied Venice. Now, just a touch of salt. A bit more butter to make it rich and fat. The cooks would stir this concoction until the sauce was creamy. To the European traders who flocked to Venice, the excesses of her cuisine must have amazed as much as her canals and architecture. And Venice used her considerable might to ensure that nowhere else in Europe was it possible to purchase pepper. Dr. Fabio Zoppolata's family has been buying and selling spices for generations. He is the last pepper merchant of Venice. Pepper has always been transported by water. In Venice, the short journey from the Zoppolata family warehouse to the central market was no exception.
Qui siamo nel centro di Venezia.
We are in the center of Venice, in the center of the market of Venice. Since the old days, this area has been important for trade. It was most important for the spice trade, especially pepper. The state even appointed special pepper officials to act as brokers between buyers and sellers. These brokers kept information secret. Exchanges of information between sellers and clients were whispered in the ear. So influential was the square that here the fathers of Venice proclaimed their decrees on that stone over there, supported by a statue called the Dwarf of the Rialto. For us, the dwarf has always been a popular character. So jealous were the Venetians of their secrets that they did more than just whisper them. They kept all foreigners away from the market to prevent them from learning the true quotations for spices, especially pepper. The Germans, for example, were kept locked on the other side of the Rialto Bridge in their own warehouse or fondaco. They never knew wholesale prices. This is the side of the canal where the Germans were kept. They were very important. In the 15th century, they bought more than half of all Venetian spices. But traders came from everywhere in Europe, all prepared to exchange gold for pepper. The Venetians treated them very well. Why not? They were customers, but they also kept them in the dark about current prices. The Venetians traded with everyone, Turks, Arabs, everyone. Religion or ideology were unimportant, just gold and spices.
Portugal, the table of King John I. The Portuguese hated the Venetians both for draining their gold and for passing it on to the mortal enemies of Christendom, the Islamic Arabs. This man, King John's son, had an idea, a plan which eventually would touch every human being on earth. He was Prince Henry of Navarre, the navigator. The people of Portugal erected this statue in 1966 to commemorate that brief yet crucial historical moment. Henry planned to send Portuguese ships around Africa to India. There they would attack the Arabs and capture the pepper trade. But just a short distance down the coast was the furthest Europeans had ever ventured. Beyond raged currents and winds unknown. Nobody knew where Africa ended, if indeed Africa ended. The devout Prince Henry trusted not only his God, but scientific research. In 1418, he built a school for shipbuilding and navigation at Portugal's southerly tip. Scandinavians, Jews, Arabs, shipbuilders, chart makers, all assembled. Their goal, the circumnavigation of Africa and Eastern pepper. caravels, the fastest, most maneuverable ships afloat, probed deeper and deeper down the African coast. By 1488, 30 years after Henry's death, they reached Africa's end. Vasco da Gama in 1497, spurred on by Columbus's American discoveries, also in search of pepper, da Gama reached Calicut, India. To the Portuguese captain, the Prince of Calicut asked, "What in the world brings you here?" Replied da Gama, "I have come for Christians and spices." But India was far more sophisticated than Africa. The prince wanted gold. The Arab traders refused to trade. The Portuguese left disgraced and empty-handed. Vasco da Gama, however, was not a man to trifle with. 5 years later, he returned to India, not with gold, but with guns. His fighting ships sank Arab vessels. He bombarded Calicut into submission. The pepper was now Portuguese. Calicut would remain under European rule for the next 450 years. By the time Vasco da Gama died, Portugal had acquired an empire stretching from Brazil to the gates of China, all from the quest for pepper. Vasco da Gama's body lies here in Lisbon, but his heart is buried in the east. Sarawak, part of the island of Borneo, part of modern Malaysia. In company with India, Indonesia and Brazil, this country is one of the world's foremost regions for pepper cultivation. The spice grows on tall climbing vines trained around central wooden standards, now hidden by the abundant foliage. These trees were planted 12 years ago. They are now in their prime. Berries are picked green just as they begin to turn red or ripen. The harvest is from May to August. It's hot work. Pepper grows only near the equator, and cultivation on Sarawak is the most intensive on Earth. In a single season, each of these vines will yield up to 10 kilograms of the spice. Piper nigrum, the true pepper of commerce. The name derives from the ancient Sanskrit pipali, meaning berry. This very day, in all probability, you have already eaten or will eat some pepper. And that pepper was spread out to dry in the sun, just like this. A few fully grown but green berries are harvested before acquiring their full, sharp, peppery pungency. Preserved in brine and bottled, their destination will be gourmet shops and chic restaurants. Green pepper's worldwide popularity is growing, yet the main importer remains France. In Sarawak, the job of preparing pepper is not only hot, but often wet. A sizable proportion of the crop is left to ripen and redden a little longer than usual. These berries are packed into sacks, which are soaked in a stream. They remain submerged for up to 2 weeks. In the water, a bacterial rotting process causes the pericarps, or outer husks of the fruit, to separate from their solid inner cores. Growers in Brazil have developed a mechanical system for removing outer skins, but still today, this is the preparation method for most of the world's white pepper. This is necessary in case any husks still cling to the berries. After a second drying in the sun, the white pepper is cleaned and made ready for shipping to the world. The white pepper is used only as a kitchen or table spice. It accounts for about a quarter of all pepper traded. But more pungent black pepper commands 3/4 of the market. Kitchens are only one of its destinations. Large quantities find their way into manufactured and processed foods. Well, the pepper now belongs to the world. London, the Dorchester Hotel. Naturally, here one finds green pepper, white pepper, the ubiquitous black pepper, and something called red pepper. It's not Piper nigrum at all, but the fruit of a South American shrub. Master Chef Anton Mosselman. He prepares one of his creations, steak Dorchester.
Steak Dorchester is one of our specialities, which we created about 4 years ago. We take the best possible beef from Scotland, the Angus beef, and we saute the steak in oil and butter. We flame it with brandy, and then cream and cream sauce. We then use 4 different kinds of peppers and make a sauce with it, garnished with some vegetables. We believe in color and taste, and with 4 different peppers, you get obviously 4 different kinds of taste in one sauce, and all mixed together, you have a quite nice taste, different flavors, which we believe gives a nice combination for the beautiful beef we serve.
They say the first steak au poivre was prepared for King Louis XIV of France. Could be. By the age of enlightenment, pepper had emerged as the spice for the developing cuisine. Certainly the diners would agree that no other seasoning is necessary. The merchants of Europe sent forth their own ships to return laden with Eastern luxuries. Of the declining Portuguese, wrote one Englishman, they opened and improved the trade for a considerable time, till riches begot pride, effeminacy, and prodigality. 2 great maritime nations arose, Holland and England. The cities of Amsterdam and here London grew into great centres of international commerce. Pepper flowed in and for the most part out again. Hopefully gold and silver was exchanged in its place, but the business of doing business halfway across the world created unforeseen risks and complexities. Companies of adventurers formed. East India House here was the headquarters of the largest. In 1609, the East India Company gained a monopoly in the pepper trade. Inside, in the sale room, bidders vied for pieces of the eastern voyages, ultimately called shares. Ships sailed right up the Thames to disgorge their goods. At Customs House, the scene was frantic. Daily, the money dealers assembled at the Bank of England. They quickly learned that real profits meant using somebody else's money. The place was in an uproar. The Royal Exchange. These businessmen literally are standing on pepper. The pepper vaults of the East India Company are in the basement below their feet. Investing was extremely complicated. The problem was that pepper from various voyages incurred different costs and commanded different prices. Trust the merchants of London and Amsterdam to find a solution and enjoy their little lunch. Instead of shares in voyages, they sold shares in the companies themselves. Ironically, to help describe their activity, they borrowed a word from the Venetians, capital. The pepper traders of London and Amsterdam invented capitalism. In 1798, the schooner Raja sailed into the port of New York. Pepper politics changed once again. The ship had been feared lost, but now in her hold lay 150,000 pounds of pepper. Jonathan Carnes, her captain, found the cargo in a remote part of the island of Sumatra. He tried to hide his success, especially from the Yankee captains of his home port, Salem. But the word was out. America joined the pepper rush. Americans are people who rarely do things by halves. Before the Raja, the United States was out of the pepper business. Just 7 years after, she exported almost 8 million tons. Pepper revenues helped build the new nation and create its legendary affluence. But as the flow of immigrants brought their own cultures and cuisines, something happened to pepper. Its price dropped. From being a spice of princes, it became the spice for everyone. Today, Americans consume more pepper than any other people on Earth. And what better illustrates the versatility of pepper in America than good old-fashioned southern fried chicken? Under many names, it's a worldwide favorite. Or buffalo steak, the new rage. Once the staple diet of the North American Indian, the fillet takes on a new sophistication, massaged with pepper, French style. Southern fried chicken can be prepared in 100 ways, but pepper is a must. Buffalo steak au poivre, on the other hand, is a new pepper adventure. But then the Americans are not pepper shy. Imagine lashings of the spice with bacon dripping, or in a sugar pie, or baked with peanut butter and maple syrup. Whatever your fancy, pepper is unique. It can be sprinkled on food before cooking, while cooking, or eaters can use it right at the table. No wonder it's everywhere. So, pepper has even been to outer space, in the astronaut soup. Perhaps someday you'll go there too.